Welcome, fellow tech enthusiasts. Starting today, we are launching a new series called Zero to Hero. These short length videos will be perfect for brushing up on your concepts or quickly gaining service knowledge if you are planning to learn that product or service. If you have a specific use case but you don't have sufficient time to read books or online materials, by following our Zero to Hero courses, we will help you quickly grasp sufficient knowledge to succeed in your implementation use case or to answer any interview or exam questions. Let's get started with today's topic. And first, let's review the topics what we are going to cover. If you feel that we are missing any important concept from the topic, please write a comment on this video. We will include that particular content in the video. To start with, we will review what is YAML, then where YAML is used, followed by why YAML is so popular. And that leads us to why should you learn YAML? Then we'll dive deep into YAML. We'll start with the YAML syntax. We'll see different YAML data types. We'll see how to write comments, then collections, followed by lists, how to use lists, then environment variables, and then multi-line strings. We'll discuss about the use cases where you should use environment variables, where you should use multi-line strings. Then we'll talk about YML placeholders, and at the end of the video, I'll give you some best practices that you should follow while writing any YML scripts. Before we start, I would like to request you, if you are new to our channel or haven't subscribed yet, then please subscribe to our channel and please click on the bell icon to get notification for any new topics. To begin with, we'll review what is YAML. YAML full form is YAML and markup language. It was originally known as yet another markup language. It later named as YAML and markup language. YAML is a human readable data serialization format that is commonly used for configuration files and data exchange between programming languages. I know human readable data serialization, that may be a little confusing. So let's treat them one by one. First, we'll review what is data serialization language. Data serialization is the process of converting data objects present in complex data structures into a byte stream for storage, transfer, and distribution purpose on physical devices. Now we understood what is serialization. Then what is data serialization languages? Data serialization languages provide a platform and language natural data format that all systems can understand. Some common examples are JSON, XML, Boson, and YAML. Again, these are not all four, but these are the popular fours. Now let's try to compare how a YAML file looks like in contrast to a XML file or a JSON file. We'll start with XML and let's see, this is one XML where I'm trying to store employee details. Like I have two employees. In JSON representation, it will be represented like this. There will be curly braces and then there will be some indentation. So you can see the difference between XML and JSON, and I believe you are very familiar with these syntaxes. Now let's see how that format will look like in a YAML file. First of all, there is no special character like XML or JSON file has. And you can see here in YAML file, it's only new lines and indentations. YAML is a popular programming language because it is designed to be easy to read and understand. If you compare all the three files side by side, you will be able to understand YAML is very easy to read among all three. To write YAML, you really do not need any special characters as a separator. In XML file, we saw angular brackets. For JSON, we see curly braces. But for YAML, it is only formatted using spaces and indentations. Now you must be thinking, what will be the file format for a YAML file? You can have two different file format. Either you can use .yaml or you can use .yml. Both the file format works perfectly. You can choose what you want. Now let's review where YAML is used. The first use case is configuration files. As of today, YAML is widely used in multiple software applications, maybe setting up CI/CD pipelines, or even in DevOps tools like Docker, Kubernetes, Azure, AWS DevOps. All uses YAML as their configuration file. Other use cases infrastructure as code, AWS Cloud Formation, Ansible, Azure ARM, Google Cloud Deployment Manager, all uses YAML to create the infrastructure as code scripts. Next, data sharing. You can use YAML to cross-language compatibility and it makes it excellent choice for data sharing. Then you can use for inter-process messaging, also for object persistence. If you want to persist the data into database, you can store in YAML format as well. Then we will move to why YAML is so popular. Popular services like Docker, Ansible, Kubernetes, Prometheus, Terraform, Azure DevOps, AWS DevOps, GCP DevOps, or other DevOps tool uses YAML for configuration files. Now, one point I would like to mention, Terraform uses HashiCorp Configuration Language or HCL. However, you can use YAML in conjugation with HCL to write the scripts. Now, in your actual use cases, I'm sure you will use one or more of these tools. To use these tools very efficiently, you have to create configuration files or sometimes you have to create scripts. To use this tool, it's important to understand YAML syntax and concepts. As I mentioned, YAML is a programming language with easy human readable format. Now that gives us the confidence that why should you learn YAML? And I believe I really do not have to explain specifically now what is the important and why you should learn YAML. From here, we'll move to a IDE and there we'll do some coding and we'll see how you can create an YAML file and all other different syntaxes that we have taught previously. For this demo, I am going to use Microsoft VS Code Editor. If you have any other IDE that supports YAML, you can do so. If you want to use any online editor to follow along with me, you are feel free to do so. Let me show you what online tool I am using. I use YAML lint. This is my preferred YAML validator or editor. But if you do not like YAML lint, you can go to Google and type YAML online editor. Then whatever the tool you like, you can select that particular YAML editor and follow along with me. I'm back to my VS Code editor and there we are going to see or review different YAML syntax. We'll first start with YAML data types. I'll start with employee, then colon, and then new line character. Now to start in the new, you have to give two spaces. And then here I am going to write name and whatever the name I want to provide. Maybe I will use the name as Sarah Jackson. Also, I want to use age and maybe I'll provide age as 30. Now, the other attribute could be gender and here I can put female. Other attribute could be is married. You can write yes. The other attribute could be monthly spend and here I can use some decimal number, maybe 300.50. I'm taking some fictitious number. The name, this is a string. And unlike other, you do not have to use double quote or single quote. But if you want, you can do so. A string can be represented with double quote or with single quote or even without a quote. YAML compiler provides us that flexibility. Coming back to the age, it is an integer, and if you can see, the color is different with different data types. Now is married, that is a boolean value. Now for boolean, you can use different parameters. You can use true, false, you can use yes, no, or you can use on, off. All will work as boolean. Now let me show you. You can use yes in all small, or you can use yes in all capital, or you can use yes in the first letter as capital. All represent the same. Now if I'll replicate that, again I have to indent this properly. So this is a valid variable type, or this is a valid boolean variable. This is also a valid boolean declaration. You can use whatever you like, and please remember that use only one, do not use all three. Similarly, if I go to no, then either you can use the first letter as capital, or all small, or even all capital. That is also a valid boolean type, which is actually false. The second is you can use true, false, and there also you can use the first letter capital, or all capital, or all in small letter. Also, you can write off and on. So these are all different Boolean types. Now, if I'll summarize that, what are the different ways you can declare a Boolean? These are the summary. Either you can use true, false, or you can use on, off, or you can use yes, no. One point you have to remember, YAML is case sensitive. Now, if you see a particular attribute, this is called key value pair, where I have name as the key and the value as Sarah Jackson. This is the value of that key, right? So this is how a key value pair works in YAML to form the template. Now let's remove all those redundant variables and let's keep one such that it will be a valid employee detail. The next part we'll explore is comment. Now, commenting is one of the important aspects when you are creating configuration files or writing codes, because whoever is going to maintain that code, it will be easy for them. Now, YAML does not support multi-line comment. To write a comment, you have to simply use hash and then give a space and write the comment what you want to do. Maybe I'll write this is an example of YAML data types. Now, if you want to write multi-line comments, you can use another line with a hash and then space. Here you can write your second line. These will be second line comment. Please remember this, unlike other programming language, you cannot use multi-line comments with a single syntax. Here you have to repurpose the hashtag sign to write comment. And if the hashtag sign is available before any line with a space, that line will be considered as a comment line. Next, we'll go to collection. And collection is another one important aspect. Now, let's say we want to see how a list work. Maybe I am going to create another one attribute is called fruits. And in fruits, I want to list maybe apple, banana, orange, cherry. Now, these all fruits are attribute of that list. In YAML, you can define list with one dash and space. If you see some files with the dash indentation, sometimes the dash can be with the top level. This is also a valid list. And the other part, that is also a valid list. That means sometimes you can see there will be two spaces and then this. So both these declarations are valid. Please do not get confused with this indentation. Now maybe we can use that YAML online validator to validate this syntax. First, we'll copy the top declaration and then we'll open the YAML validator. you can see this is a valid YAML. Now, if I'll take the other YAML, see, both the syntax are valid YAML. This is only a difference in indentation. Now, if you are using YAML for the first time, it is very good idea to use a YAML validator, because when the YAML file will be considerably long, you may face challenge to locate any indentation issue or compilation issue if you are using a text editor. There is other format also you can use to represent list. A pair of square brackets, and inside that brackets you can define the list attributes. Apple, banana, orange, cherry. I'll remove this. This is again another one valid list declaration. You can either use this declaration or this declaration with a different indentation. Now here, let's say instead of banana, I can put 3.0. You can mix and match different data types in one list, and that will be absolutely fine. Next, we will see some complex mappings. Maybe we have that key value pair and the list. When you will work in an actual use case, there you may deal with multiple employees. It's not only one attribute. And then how we are going to write? Let's use that. So maybe I'll start with a comment, and then I'll use employees, and I'll copy, maybe this is my first employee, and then I'll start with this dash sign because it will be a list, and then I'll create another one, employee. Maybe the name I'll change. Instead of Sarah Jackson, I can put some different name, and maybe the age is 31, maybe it will be male. And so these are just different two employees. And here what I am going to do, I'm going to use as a list, or it will be a complex sequence. Next, we are going to review the environment variables. This is a Kubernetes pod configuration. In Kubernetes, you can define environment variables for a container in a pod. Now, if you see here, I have used two environment variables. One is named demo greeting and demo farewell. First, we have declared the API version, and the kind is pod, then the metadata, and then in the spec section where I have defined the containers, in containers, I have created an environment section, and under that environment section, I have named as demo greeting. The value is hello from the environment, and then another one environment variable, the demo farewell, and the value is such a sweet sorrow. So this is a way you can define, or you can use YAML file to declare your environment variables. We'll see another one use case, and this time maybe I'll use Spring Boot application configuration. If you are familiar with Spring Boot application, there we are defining servers. And in server, we have to define the server address and the port. You can use environment variable to dynamically assign those values. Now here I have used server address. There I have OpenShift DIY IP and OpenShift DIY port in the port. This is another one way of defining or assigning environmental variable. We'll discuss a third use case also, and you may encounter that use case in your daily life. Now let's say you want to create a Python configuration file. How you will declare the environmental variable there. Let me write that code first and then I'll explain. Here is a simple Python configuration file where I am configuring the database. First, the name, whatever the database name, then user. To assign user, I have used environmental variable. I have used a special syntax, exclamatory mark env, and then dollar sign, and then the variable name inside a pair of curly braces. In Python, you can use this custom syntax, exclamatory mark env, to load the environmental variables. I have used the same syntax for password and the host as well. Instead of hard coding the value, I can use environmental variable to dynamically assign the values based on the selected environment parameters. So these are the three different ways you can declare environmental variable in your YAML file. Our next topic is multi-line string. Now in your application, you will find there are multiple use cases where you have to use multiple line comments. If I'll take an example, let's say I am taking string example. Here I am trying to write a string. Maybe my string is this is a sample for the Cloud Expert Solution YouTube demo to illustrate multiple line in YML file. This is going to be really a long line. I have used some random text here or some random sentences here. Now, if you are going to use that one in a single line, sometimes it's not good for readability and also not good for maintenance purpose as well, right? Now, you may come across multiple scenario. Maybe I'll talk about the actual use case, but let me explain how you are going to achieve that goal. To use that, you have to start with a pipe sign. If you have to use with a pipe and then break the line wherever you want. Now, when there will be a pipe, YML will treat all those lines as a single line. This is how you will be able to use or break lines in between. Now, there is a reverse use case where you have to represent that all the lines in a single line. Then what you will do? Now, let me copy this, the same example. I'll paste it. And in this case, although those lines are in different line, I want to treat them as a single line. In that case, I'll use a greater than sign. Now, if you want to break those line or break one line into multiple lines, then you have to use pipe. If you have declared multiple lines, but you want to treat them as a single line, then you have to use this angular bracket or the greater than sign. Now, let's review some actual use cases where you need this kind of feature. Here is the use case. In your actual use case, maybe you have to write some native query. Again, based on your application demand, if you are writing a native query, then writing that query in single line, sometimes it's not very human readable format, and you may have some syntactical error that cannot be detected early. That is why we may break that SQL query into multiple lines. And if you have a use case, you can use the pipe. Let me explain another one use case. This is a cloud formation template where I am configuring amplify configuration. Now, if you see under output, I have amplify config, and there I have a description where I am giving key values to be passed to amplify configuration file or the amplify.config file. And my value is AWS config identity pool ID. And then again, I have used environmental variable where I have used your user pool. Then AWS sign in enable, I'm making it enable. And AWS user pool MFA type, it's a Boolean variable where I have used off. So this is different use cases where you may have to break one line into multiple lines for better readability and for better maintainability. In that case, you can use the pipes. Next, we'll discuss YAML placeholders. Now, you may have used placeholders in other languages and you may have to use in your future also. So it is a very important concept to learn. Let me write a code fragment first and then I'll explain. In this example or in YAML, placeholders are also known as anchors and aliases. Now in this example, ampersand default defines a set of default values. And now where I have used these variables or I have used this parameter as default, there I have used two angular brackets and then star defaults. So this syntax is used to insert these values into the development and the test environment. Now, whatever I will define as defaults at the first place, it will be inserted into in development and the test. You are going to define the defaults at the beginning, and then to insert those default values, you are going to use two angular brackets. There are other use cases also where you can use placeholders. Now let me show you an example of a complex placeholder. In this example, we are going to talk about the variable substitution, and it is a complex placeholder. Before explaining for variable substitution, you might need to use a templating engine or tool that support this complex feature. Kubernetes supports variable substitution. That is why we have used the Kubernetes pod config file. And here, for this example, env name enclosing with percentage sign works as a placeholder and will be replaced with the actual value when Kubernetes configuration is applied. Now let me show you another one syntactical example where I am going to use AWS Cloud Formation template. This is a simple cloud formation template, and if you remember while discussing the multiple lines, I have talked about this amplify configurations. Let me explain what the cloud formation template is doing first, and then I'll show you how you can use that placeholder. Now here we are defining the resource pool, and type is AWS Cognito user pool. Properties name, user pool name, you can provide whatever you want. I have put blah blah blah. And then in the output section where you have the amplify configuration, I have a description, and then in the value I have used this sub. This is the special syntax with the pipe, because if you want to use variable with those string, then you should use sub. If you are only using this pipe, then variables might not be recognized by YAML. That is why if you want to use variables in those string, please use this special syntax, that is exclamatory mark and then sub, and after that use pipe. By this way you will be able to use the variable. Now if I'll concentrate on the cloud formation value tab, the first line where I have defined AWS Cognito Identity Pool ID, I have used an environmental variable, and then the next line I have used a string. The third line for the user pool MFA type, I have used a Boolean string. Again, although this is a string, I have used as a Boolean. And then for AWS region, I have used this special syntax where I have used two curly braces and then AWS colon colon region. Now this is a placeholder for CloudFormation template, and CloudFormation will replace this placeholder with actual AWS region when the YAML file will be deployed by CloudFormation. So these are the different ways you can use placeholder. Now it's time to share some best practices. Now you may encounter some use cases where you will write multiple small YAML configuration files. You have two options. Either you can maintain separate small configuration files, or you can put all those configurations of small fragments into one big. And if you want to use multiple different configurations into one configuration file, then please use 3 dash. 3 dash means it's a separate configuration. Now, if you want to see that this is the end of my configuration file, to denote this is my end, you have to use 3 dots. So let's say if I'll use 3 dots, that means this is the beginning of my configuration and this is the end of my configuration. And YAML will treat this block as a separate configuration files. Like that way, you will be able to reduce the number of files, and you can pack configuration for different items into one configuration. To begin with, you should use indentation, and please use consistent indentation. Typically, you can use two spaces to denote the parent-child relationship in that configuration file. Then use comments. As I mentioned earlier, comments can be very helpful in explaining the purpose of a particular section of your YAML file. And to use comment, you have to start with that hash key. If you want to use multiple lines of comment, then you should use hash sign before every line. Any line starts with hash will be denoted as a comment. Use meaningful and descriptive key names. Like for this example, I have used database, username, password. You can use descriptive names for better maintainability. Then use anchors and aliases. We have already reviewed this part and this will help you to avoid repetition. Then, as I was discussing just before these best practices, you should use three dash or three dots to denote the beginning of a document and the end of the document. We have also seen this in our examples. And last but not least, please use pipe or greater than sign or the angular bracket. Where you have a use case where new lines to be preserved, then please use the pipe. And for multiple lines where the new lines become space, then use the angular bracket or the greater than sign. And we also seen that in our example. Thank you for joining me today. I hope today's video was helpful and you enjoyed. If you found this content helpful, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more in-depth discussion on AWS and other cutting-edge technologies. Feel free to leave comments below with any questions or topics you would like to see covered in future videos. Thank you again for your time and engagement. Until next time, happy cloud computing and take care.